Chapter 8 of the Dain Curse. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 8 But and If. Fitzstephen and I ate one of Mrs. Schindler's good dinners that evening in her low-ceilinged basement, and drank her husband's good beer. The novelist in Fitzstephen was busy trying to find what he called Mrs. Leggett's psychological basis. "The killing of her sister is plain enough, knowing her character as we now do," he said. "And so are the killing of her husband, her attempt to ruin her niece's life when she was exposed, and even her determination to kill herself on the stairs rather than be caught. But the quiet years in between, where do they fit in?" "It's Leggett's murder that doesn't fit in," I argued. "The rest is all one piece. She wanted him. She killed her sister, or had her killed, in a way to tie him to her. But the law pulled them apart. There was nothing she could do about that, except wait and hope for the chance that always existed that he would be freed some day. We don't know of anything else she wanted then. Why shouldn't she be quiet, holding Gabrielle as her hostage against the chance she hoped for, living comfortably enough, no doubt, on his money? When she heard of his escape, she came to America and set about finding him. When her detectives located him here, she came to him. He was willing to marry her. She had what she wanted. Why should she be anything but quiet? She wasn't a troublemaker for the fun of it, one of these people who act out of pure mischief. She was simply a woman who wanted what she wanted and was willing to go to any length to get it. Look how patiently and for how many years she hid her hatred from the girl. And her wants weren't even very extravagant. You won't find the key to her in any complicated derangements. She was simple as an animal, with an animal's simple ignorance of right and wrong, dislike for being thwarted, and spitefulness when trapped." Fitzstephen drank beer and asked, "You'd reduce the Dain curse, then, to a primitive strain in the blood?" "To less than that. To words in an angry woman's mouth." "It's fellows like you that take all the color out of life." He sighed behind cigarette smoke. "Doesn't Gabrielle's being made the tool of her mother's murder convince you of the necessity, at least the poetic necessity, of the curse?" "Not even if she was the tool, and that's something I wouldn't bet on. Apparently, Leggett didn't doubt it. He stuffed his letter with those ancient details to keep her covered up. But we've only got Mrs. Leggett's word that he actually saw the child kill her mother. On the other hand, Mrs. Leggett said, in front of Gabrielle, that Gabrielle had been brought up to believe her father the murderer, so we can believe that. And it isn't likely, though it's possible, that he would have gone that far except to save her from knowledge of her own guilt. But from that point on, one guess at the truth is about as good as another. Mrs. Leggett wanted him, and she got him. Then why in hell did she kill him?" "You jump around so," Fitzstephen complained. "You answered that back in the laboratory. Why don't you stick to your answer? You said she killed him because the letter sounded enough like a pre-suicide statement to pass, and she thought it and his death would ensure her safety." "That was good enough to say then," I admitted, "but not now, in cold blood, with more facts to fit in. She had worked and waited for years to get him. He must have had some value to her." "But she didn't love him, or there is no reason to suppose she did. He hadn't that value to her. He was to her no more than a trophy of the hunt, and that's a value not affected by death. One has the head embalmed and nailed on the wall." "Then why did she keep Upton away from him? Why did she kill Rupert? Why should she have carried the load for him there? It was his danger. Why did she make it hers if he had no value to her? Why did she risk all that to keep him from learning that the past had come to life again?" "I think I see what you're getting at," Fitzstephen said slowly. "You think— Wait, here's another thing. I talked to Leggett and his wife together a couple of times. Neither of them addressed a word to the other either time, though the woman did a lot of acting to make me think she would have told me something about her daughter's disappearance if it had not been for him. Where did you find Gabrielle? After seeing Ruppert murdered, she beat it to the Halderns with what money she had and her jewelry, turning the jewelry over to Minnie Hershey to raise money on. Minnie bought a couple of pieces for herself. Her man had picked himself up a lot of dough in a crap game a night or two before. The police checked that and sent the man out to peddle the rest. He was picked up in a hock shop just on general suspicion. Gabrielle was leaving home for good? He asked. You can't blame her, thinking her father a murderer and now catching her stepmother in the act. Who'd want to live in a home like that? And you think Leggett and his wife were on bad terms? That may be. I hadn't seen much of them lately, and wasn't intimate enough with them to have been let in on a condition of that sort if it had existed. Do you think he had perhaps learned something, some of the truth about her? Maybe, but not enough to keep him from taking the fall for her on Ruppert's murder. And what he had learned wasn't connected with this recent affair, because the first time I saw him, he really believed in the burglary. But then... Aw, shut up. You're never satisfied until you've got two buts and an if attached to everything. I don't see any reason for doubting Mrs. Leggett's story. She told us the whole thing quite gratuitously. Why should we suppose that she'd lie to implicate herself? You mean in her sister's murder? She'd been acquitted of that, and I suppose the French system's like ours, in that she couldn't be tried again for it no matter what she confessed. She didn't give away anything, brother. Always belittling, he said. You need more beer to expand your soul. At the Leggett-Ruppert inquests, I saw Gabrielle Leggett again, but was not sure that she even recognized me. She was with Madison Andrews, who had been Leggett's attorney and was now his estate's executor. Eric Collinson was there, but peculiarly, apparently not with Gabrielle. He gave me nods and nothing else. The newspapers got hold of what Mrs. Leggett had said happened in Paris in 1913 and made a couple-day fuss over it. The recovery of Halstead and Beauchamp's diamonds left the Continental Detective Agency out. We wrote discontinued at the bottom of the Leggett record. I went up in the mountains to snoop around for a gold mine owner who thought his employees were gypping him. I expected to be in the mountains for at least a month. Inside jobs of that sort take time. On the evening of my 10th day there, I had a long-distance call from the old man, my boss. "I'm sending Foley up to relieve you," he said. "Don't wait for him. Catch tonight's train back. The Leggett matter is active again." End of Chapter 8.